Today, we're gonna talk cinnamon. Did you know that cinnamon grows on trees, but you should actually grow it as a shrub? I didn't know that. In fact, I didn't know anything about growing cinnamon when I first planted a tree at my old place. But today I'm gonna share with you what I've learned over the years about cinnamon, especially how to harvest it. Let's start right here at the end point. This is freshly harvested cinnamon that still needs to dry. I harvested it from branches that I took from a cinnamon tree that's growing on my old homestead. The cinnamon tree that I'm harvesting from is called a CEYLON cinnamon, and it is also known as true cinnamon. It's what most cinnamon aficionados consider cinnamon, but it's not what you typically find in the grocery store. That might be instead the variety is called cinnamon CASSIA, or a variety known as cinnamon KORINTJE. I think that's how you say it at least. And then there's one more variety they call royal cinnamon, which is not heavily cultivated. It's really sweet and really spicy. And it was originally harvested for royalty. Go figure. That must be why they called it royal cinnamon. But today, CEYLON cinnamon is what we have. And the process for all of them is the same. You just have different flavors that come from each type of cinnamon. Now, in order to turn this branch into cinnamon that you can flavor your food with, it takes a lot of work. It's a pretty labor-intensive process, and they haven't found ways to do this mechanically yet. So most cinnamon is processed in countries where labor is cheap. People in those countries work all day to process this cinnamon so that you can buy a small jar for just $8, probably less in most places. And what do they get in return? Probably a couple pennies. You know, that's a pay rate that can make us sleep well at night in our air-conditioned McMansions, because it's reassuring to know that there's people out there that will work for so little money. Isn't it? I wonder why cinnamon production isn't a bigger thing here in Hawaii. Anyway, you harvest cinnamon by cutting branches from the tree that are between 18 to 24 months old, and the tree itself is at least 3 years old. You can do this just after the rainy season when the sap in the bark is still running, which makes it easier to pry off the cinnamon rind. You can see the branches aren't huge in diameter, but each one packs a flavorful punch. I like the sticks that I work with to be about 1 foot long. It just makes them easier to handle. And all you need is a cinnamon stick and a knife. I got this one from CASSIA Knives, who I'll leave a link for down in the description below. But all you got to do is start scraping off the bark. We want to be sure to get all of the bark off. You don't want to go too deep though, because if you go too deep, you get into the layers of cinnamon. But if you don't take enough off, you run the risk of ingesting deadly toxins that are inside of this bark. And so you don't want to do that either. So I want to make sure that I scrape all the bark off completely, including any green areas. So this stick is ready to peel. We got all the bark off, the green spots are gone. There's a little bit of brown spots from where branches were, but we can cut those out later. And you can see here that this little outer ring around the inner hardwood, that is the cinnamon that we're gonna harvest right here. So all we need to do is get a butter knife. We want to score the stick all the way down to the bottom. And then we're just going to start slowly prying up one side, getting our butter knife just underneath that wood layer. And we're going to start to pry it off. First part is probably the hardest part. Once you got that off, the next part's kind of come a little bit easier. I'm getting it in just under the layer, and I'm kind of using a prying motion with the knife, and start to see that I'm getting under the layer there, and I can really just open it up. And typically at this point, I'll shift and pry open the other side. You can see it. It's not that easy to get a full uncut piece. See? But you could save these little pieces and dry them. Oh boy, you can see this process is not easy. But we're almost there. There we are. This is the cinnamon. As it dries, it'll turn into the more traditional brown cinnamon color. But we're gonna harvest a few more of these, and then we're gonna wrap them up and we're gonna set them out to dry. And I'll show you the drying process as well. But before we do that, I'm gonna get a few more made up. Oh, so here it is, freshly harvested cinnamon, but now we need to dry it all. So we're gonna tie off these little bundles with little bits of string. So we could tie off some of the bundles that aren't staying close with some string, or some of these are pretty tight, and so they could just stay wrapped up on their own. And we're gonna go ahead and set this up in a dry place. So I made a space up in the rafters where I could place my cinnamon sticks to dry and easily access them so that I could come back tomorrow and re-tighten the bundles. After a week or so, you should have cinnamon that is dry enough to store or churn into powder. But be warned, because once you turn cinnamon into powder, its shelf life isn't very long anymore. It's much better to keep it as these little cigar rolls and store them in some sort of airtight bag, like a Mylar bag that you can seal real rough. This will allow your cinnamon to keep for a really long time. So that's how you process cinnamon to use in the kitchen. But what are we gonna do with all these leftover tree trimmings? Well, guess what? You can plant them. That's right. Cinnamon is sometimes used as a rooting hormone when propagating plants. And that means when it comes to taking cuttings of cinnamon, they should be able to root real easily. I'll show you exactly how to do it in this video right here, but it might take me a week or two to actually get it made. But in the meantime, you might want to watch this video that shows you how to make your own coconut oil. Because I bet if you're into making your own cinnamon sticks, you're probably into making your own coconut oil too. So why not give that video a watch and subscribe to my channel so you know when I'll put out the cinnamon propagation video. So thanks for watching everybody today. Ahui ho.